Thank you, Lascan Corla. So this question just relates to the cost-benefit analysis report on wind energy and the impact that it could have on consumers' energy bills. I'm just asking when it will be published and if it's been delayed and what the reason for the delay.
Minister.
Thank you, Lascan Corla. Analysis undertaken by the Department, the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, EirGrid and the Commission for Energy Regulation has assessed the costs and value of choosing the path towards 40% renewable electricity generation by 2020 compared to a scenario where renewable electricity remained at 2013 levels. This analysis has informed a report which will be published shortly. It's important to note that our transition to renewables has been underpinned by a number of previous studies. The All-Ireland Grid Study, published in 2008, assessed the technical feasibility and the relative costs and benefits associated with various scenarios for increased shares of electricity sourced from renewable energy in the All-Ireland power system. The scenarios were informed by the resource available, technological readiness of the various generation technologies and costs required per generated unit. The mapping for the analysis also assessed the deployment potential based on where the resource was and an overview of environmentally designated areas. The 2008 study informed the position for a contribution of 40% renewable electricity in Ireland by 2020. It concluded that, based on assumptions set out in the report, wind energy represented a cost-effective source for electricity generation. The abundant wind resource in Ireland means that each unit of installed wind generation capacity generates more units of electricity when compared with other countries, and hence needs a lower rate per generated unit of electricity in order to recover the overall cost of the project. The existing feed-in tariff, REFIT, which is funded from the PSO levy on consumer bills, is a very cost-effective tool to support this development, as indicated by a report published by the Council of European Energy Regulators earlier this year. This position has been underpinned by various reports and analyses which have examined the effect of renewables on electricity prices. The ESRI, the Irish Wind Energy Association, the SEAI and EirGrid have undertaken such studies and published the results of same. Furthermore, wind generation in Ireland in 2012 is estimated by the SEAI to have displaced fossil fuels, almost all of which would have been imported, to an estimated value of €177 million, with the value of avoided CO2 emissions being a further €11 million.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Thomas Pringle.
Thank you, Minister. So I take it that the report will be published shortly, however long shortly will be. But I think it's vitally important that we do know and that the report is comprehensive. There has been reports of in a number of other European countries where the subsidies towards renewable energy has led to significant increases in consumers' bills, household bills, and in order to pay for it. And we're in a situation where we're looking at a huge investment having to take place in the transmission network in order to facilitate the development of wind energy across the country. And when you factor in that EirGrid intends to spend over almost €4 billion upgrading the transmission network to facilitate wind energy, it seems to me to be a very costly exercise indeed, particularly when there is other technologies available such as biomass that can be used to meet our targets without having the need for the massive infrastructural investment. Will the report examine the impact that it will have on consumers' bills, and will it actually provide a breakdown of what the impact will be and as the costs are passed on to the consumer? I think that's vitally important that consumers will be fully aware of that.
Deputy Minister.
Yes. Well, I mean, as I mentioned in my reply, there are a number of reports and analyses that have examined the effect of renewables on, for example, on electricity prices. And the Deputy is right. I mean, there's a cost. There's a cost associated with any of the technologies in terms of our supports, the supports that we need to put in place and the incentives that we need to put in place. So this issue is about, first of all, technologies, accessibility of technology, state of development of technology, cost of technologies in terms of investment. But it's also an economics issue for the Exchequer, for the government, because it involves supports and incentives, which is essentially a state funding issue as well. So, as I mentioned, the ESRI and IWEA studies both looked at the 2020 position, while a joint SEAI EirGrid study looked at the position in 2011.
Thank you.
I can certainly give the Deputy additional information, perhaps later on, or if I have an opportunity to come back.
As another supplementary, Deputy Thomas Pringle.
Yeah, Minister. will other technologies be investigated in terms of the potential costs as well? Because while the wind energy programme maybe was established in 2007, and at that time technology was pointing to wind as being a solution, technology has moved on since then, and biomass is now very, very much so a solution which actually, for significantly less investment, I've seen figures where in the region of about 10% of the cost of the upgrading of the electricity infrastructure, we could convert the likes of Moneypoint to biomass and meet our Kyoto targets and our 40% renewable energy targets through that. So, I mean, I think the report has to look at potential for other technologies as well, and recognise that technology is advancing all the time, and it may be time to actually look at the viability of wind against those technologies that are developing.
Thank you. Minister to conclude.
I mean, the question of investment, people make, assertions about the level of investment involved, and sometimes people think that other technologies are necessarily cheaper, and when you delve into it and when you examine it and analyse it, it's not necessarily always the case. For example, Moneypoint's capacity is 915 megawatts, and its demand for biomass, were you to take this approach, and of course we have to keep all of these issues very much in mind in the context of the white paper and the decision we'll be making later in the year, but a demand for biomass in the context of a conversion of Moneypoint would far exceed the available biomass, and indeed the biomass even potentially available in this jurisdiction. Some estimates actually suggest that 260,000 hectares of energy crops will be required, whereas to date 3,000 have been planted under the bioenergy scheme run by the Department of Agriculture. So in reality, the plant where we should take that approach will be heavily reliant on imported biomass, and such large-scale levels of imports would raise considerations as to environmental sustainability of such operations and so on. I'm keeping very much an open mind in relation to all of the new technologies. Solar is another, in the context of our definitive white paper, which we'll publish this September. And I welcome very much the input of all deputies in this House in relation to, particularly in the area of renewables. Wind can't solve all of our problems. It has been cost effective, but the deputy is right. We must ensure that we look at all of the other available technologies, but we can't make, we can't assume without comprehensive analysis that some of the newer technologies coming along now would necessarily be cheaper or more viable than
I call now Deputy Michael Moynihan.